As one of the 5 ruling families in the Mafia Commission, recruiting loyal and dedicated members is paramount. It's downright life or death. So when a soldier from another faction accuses a family of inducting a rat into their house, you can be sure that one snitch is getting a ditch. Join us as we explore the world of 5 of the most notorious mobsters from the Lucchese Crime Family, beginning with Anthony Baratta, the man who called out an aspiring inductee from a rival mafia family that evoked a sit-down among bosses to reach a decision. Anthony Baratta was born on July 3, 1938, and eventually became the consigliere in his crime family, a role that hid his dark and ruthless nature behind a calm exterior. His early years saw him as the Capo of the Harlem crew, where he first dipped his toes into the dark waters of New York's criminal underworld. In 1978, he was officially inducted into the family and began operating with the Bronx faction. Baratta owned a modest restaurant in East Harlem, but was often seen at rows on Pleasant Avenue, mingling with influential figures and trying to perfect his spaghetti recipe. The 1980s marked a significant rise in Baratta's career. He was promoted to Capo of the Harlem crew, gaining control of the Pleasant Avenue narcotics ring in East Harlem and expanding his reach to other rackets in the Bronx and Long Island. To manage his growing empire, Baratta placed Joseph Massaro in charge of his Long Island topless bars. However, Massaro's aggressive expansion led to a deadly feud with the Bonanno family when he started encroaching on their turf. By the late 1980s, Baratta's power had solidified. In November 1989, he participated in the induction of new members into the family, cementing his influence. His prominence within the organization grew further when, in January 1991, the boss Vic Amuso and underboss Anthony Casso went into hiding. Aldarco was promoted to acting boss, Baratta to acting underboss, and Steven Crea to acting consigliere. The family's hierarchy was shifting and Baratta's position was pivotal. Tension brewed in 1991 when Baratta reviewed a list of proposed new members from the Genovese family and spotted a familiar name, Ralph DeSimone. "He is a rat," Baratta declared, setting off a chain of events that culminated in a sit-down between the two families. The Genovese leaders, Liborio Bellomo, Michael Generoso and James Ida, met with Baratta and Darko to discuss DeSimone's fate. The meeting ended with a chilling promise: "We'll take care of it." True to their word, DeSimone's body was found in a car trunk at LaGuardia Airport on June 13, 1991. As 1991 progressed, the internal dynamics of the family shifted once more. Amuso demoted Darko and established a ruling panel to govern the family, including Baratta, Salvatore Avellino, Frank Lastarino and Alphonse Darko. Baratta was granted control over the garment center racket and began orchestrating the panel meetings, the first of which was held in East Harlem. However, Baratta's ambition led him down a perilous path. On September 18, 1991, he, along with Frank Lastarino and soldiers Mike DeSantis and Frankie Frederico, plotted to assassinate Alphonse Darko at the Kimberly Hotel in Manhattan. The plan failed and Darko defected, becoming a government witness on September 21, 1991. The family's foundation was shaken, but the ruling panel pressed on, inducting new members into the Lucchese family in October 1991. Baratta's criminal reign was abruptly ended in June 1992, when he was jailed on murder and racketeering charges. The walls of his empire began to crumble. In November 1993, facing the reality of his situation, Baratta took a plea deal and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. But the legal troubles didn't end there. In January 1995, he was indicted again, this time for the murders of Robert M. Kubeca and Donald Barstow, 2 executives of a Long Island trash collection company. It seems even in the garbage business, there's no such thing as a clean getaway. Imprisoned at the Otisville Federal Correctional Institution in September 1996, Baratta's criminal activities continued. He collaborated with DeCavalcante crime family associates to traffic Asian heroin, a decision that would seal his fate. On September 23, 1997, Baratta, along with Albert Pucco and 12 others, was arrested and charged with conspiracy to sell narcotics. Another 8-year prison sentence followed, extending his time behind bars. Baratta must have been getting quite the reputation in the prison cafeteria. After serving his time, Baratta was finally released from prison on September 25, 2012. The man who once wielded immense power and influence within the criminal underworld was now a shadow of his former self, his dark legacy etched into the annals of true crime history. When a man rises to power in the underworld, he faces a constant dance with danger, where allies can turn to enemies and a single misstep can mean a brutal end. Enter Anthony Gaspipe Casso, a name that struck fear across the gritty streets of South Brooklyn. From orchestrating million-dollar heists and surviving deadly feuds, Casso's life was a high-stakes game of poker, and death was the dealer. Today, we'll unravel the dark journey of Gaspipe Casso, a man whose path from a longshoreman to the feared underboss of the Lucchese crime family is a saga of cunning, violence, and betrayal. The scent of saltwater and sweat mingled in the South Brooklyn air on May 21, 1942, the day Anthony Gaspipe Casso entered the world. The youngest of three children, Anthony's birth added another burden to the already strained lives of Michael and Margaret Casso. Their cramped tenement echoed with the sounds of neighbours' quarrels and the distant horns of ships docking at the nearby piers. This rough neighbourhood, where every alley whispered secrets, was the only home Anthony knew. Anthony's grandparents, having fled Campania, Italy in the 1890s, had hoped for a better life in America, but the gritty streets of Brooklyn offered little respite from the struggles they left behind. Anthony's godfather, Salvatore Calimbrano, cast a long, dark shadow over his childhood. Calimbrano, a made man in the Genovese crime family, held sway over the Brooklyn docks, where the air was thick with the scent of fish and diesel, and deals were struck in hushed tones. By 16, Anthony's school days were behind him. He swapped classrooms for the dockyards, working alongside his father as a longshoreman. The work was grueling, the pay meagre, but Anthony found solace on the rooftops. There, with a pistol in hand, he honed his marksmanship, turning empty cans into targets. His sharp eye and steady hand became the stuff of legend among his friends. The rooftop shooting gallery became their kingdom, a place where Anthony reigned supreme, even making money by shooting predatory hawks for pigeon keepers. In the spring of 1968, Anthony took a brief pause on his criminal path. He married Lillian Del Duca, a fellow South Brooklyn native, in a modest ceremony filled with the scent of fresh flowers and the laughter of family. They soon had a daughter and son, their lives a beacon of normalcy amidst the chaos. But shadows from Anthony's past loomed large. Before Lillian, there was Rosemary Bellotti, a romance that lingered like a stubborn ghost. Without Lillian's knowledge, Anthony kept Rosemary as his mistress, hiding her away in a house in Mount Olive, New Jersey, for decades. Marriage did little to curb Anthony's darker inclinations. He engaged in numerous infidelities, each one a betrayal wrapped in charm. Women are drawn to us, the power, the money, he told biographer Philip Carlo, his voice a blend of pride and regret. But his heart, he claimed, always belonged to Lillian. This thin veneer of loyalty shattered in 1993 when the FBI stormed Rosemary's house and arrested him. Lillian's fury was palpable, her sense of betrayal cutting deeper than any wound. Though she eventually visited him in prison, the scars of his deceit never fully healed. Anthony's violent streak emerged early. As a member of the South Brooklyn Boys street gang, he reveled in the chaos of gang rumbles. In 1958, a clash with a rival Irish gang led to his first arrest. His father's attempt to scare him straight at the police station failed miserably. Instead, Anthony caught the eye of Christopher Christie Tick Furnari, a Lucchese family mobster. With Furnari's backing, Anthony dove headfirst into the mafia, starting with a small loan sharking operation and muscle work for gambling and drug rackets. His first arrest for attempted murder in 1961 ended in acquittal when the victim refused to testify, further cementing Anthony's growing legend. The year 1974 marked a turning point. At 32, Anthony became a made man in the Lucchese family, joining Vincent Foceri's crew. His partnership with Victor Amuso began a bond that would span 2 decades of crime, including drug trafficking, burglary and murder. Their success earned them a place in Furnari's prestigious 19th Hole crew. Together, they led the Notorious Bypass gang, committing high-stakes burglaries in banks and jewelry stores, amassing over $100 million in stolen goods. As Furnari ascended to consigliere, Anthony suggested Amuso take over as capo regime. This move solidified their partnership, with Anthony becoming Amuso's trusted right hand. In December 1985, Frank DeCicco approached Anthony with a plan to overthrow Gambino boss Paul Castellano. Despite Anthony's warnings of repercussions from the commission, Castellano's murder went ahead, a decision Anthony later condemned as the beginning of the end. As Anthony had predicted, Lucchese boss Anthony Corallo and Genovese boss Vincent Gigante sought revenge. Amuso and Anthony were tasked with eliminating the conspirators, including John Gotti. A car bomb intended for Gotti only succeeded in killing DeCicco, a failure that foreshadowed more turmoil. When Corallo was convicted in the commission trial, Anthony declined the promotion to boss, suggesting Amuso instead. Anthony took on the role of consigliere and later underboss, sharing in the massive profits from the family's criminal activities without the weight of the crown on his head. Anthony and Amuso's reign was marked by ruthless efficiency. Their empire stretched from Long Island to Queens, extorting businesses and reaping millions. Their involvement with Russian mob boss Marat Balagula expanded their reach, eliminating threats like Vladimir Reznikov with brutal precision. But tensions within the Lucchese family simmered, erupting when Anthony and Amuso ordered the murder of Jersey crew members, igniting a feud with Capo Anthony Acciaturo. Acciaturo's defiance led to a bloody crackdown. In 1991, facing indictment, Anthony and Amuso went into hiding. Entrusting Alphonse Darco with the family's operations proved a fatal mistake. An assassination attempt on Peter Chiodo failed, and Chiodo's cooperation with the feds further destabilized the family. Darco, fearing for his life, turned informant, unraveling the Lucchese web. Anthony's capture in 1993 marked the beginning of the end. Evidence seized at his mistress's house included meticulous records of the family's operations. From prison, Anthony continued to orchestrate murders while plotting escapes. His plea agreement in 1994 exposed deep corruption within law enforcement, revealing NYPD detectives on his payroll. However, his confessions, laden with grotesque details, proved too much for prosecutors to use him as a witness. But Casso wasn't finished. He turned his accusations towards Sammy Gravano, a notorious Gambino turncoat who had always claimed he never dealt drugs. Casso's allegations painted a different picture. Gravano, the government's prized informant, had been buying large quantities of cocaine, heroin and marijuana from Casso for 20 years. This bombshell added fuel to the fire, enraging the government. Yet, Casso found a bitter taste of vindication when, in 2000, Gravano pleaded guilty to running a massive narcotics ring, even selling ecstasy to adolescents. The fall of Gravano was a twisted confirmation of Casso's claims, a dark irony that highlighted the murky waters of criminal alliances. In 1998, the dark tides turned against Casso. Removed from the witness protection program, he faced allegations of bribing guards, assaulting other inmates, and making false statements about Gravano and Darco. His attorney's efforts to overturn this decision fell on deaf ears, and Judge Frederick Block sentenced Casso to 455 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom buzzed with a mix of shock and satisfaction. Justice, it seemed, had finally caught up with Gaspipe. Casso's epic rise through the Lucchese family only made his plummet that much more devastating. His sentence was set to be served at the Supermax prison ADX Florence in Colorado. Here, the once powerful mobster was reduced to a number, his movements restricted, his power stripped away. In March 2009, a brief glimmer of humanity appeared when he was transferred to the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina for prostate cancer treatment. But this respite was short-lived, and by July 2009, he was back in the cold confines of ADX Florence. The years rolled on, but on March 25, 2020, the final disastrous turn on his journey arrived. Casso, now serving his sentence at USP Tucson, tested positive during the global incident. You know, the one we can't talk about. The invisible enemy found its way into the high-security prison. Casso was placed in medical isolation, his condition deteriorating rapidly. On November 9th, he was rushed to a local hospital, gasping for breath, his body weakened by years of illness. By November 17th, he was on a ventilator, fighting for his life. His lawyers, in a final act of desperation, requested compassionate release. But the wheels of justice turned slowly, and the motion was rejected on November 28th. The fall was swift and merciless. On December 15th, 2020, at the age of 78, Anthony Gaspipe Casso died from health complications. The once feared mobster, who had danced with power and violence, met a quiet, lonely end, his life a testament to the dark paths of crime and the inevitable fall that follows.
For most people in life, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward is. When dealing with the criminal activities of the mafia, that maxim goes without saying. Joseph Joey D DiNapoli's dark deeds earned the Lucchese family millions in tax-free income, but ultimately cost him his freedom. Joseph Joey D DiNapoli, born on July 12, 1935, was a man whose life was a labyrinth of crime, power, and betrayal. Once the consigliere of the Lucchese family, his journey through the underworld was marked by both violent rises and catastrophic falls. He had two brothers, Vincent and Louis, who were equally entrenched in the criminal world as members of the Genovese crime family. The darkness began to creep into Joey's life in 1969 when he was arrested in New York on gambling charges. This initial brush with the law was just the beginning. In 1973, he was charged alongside Pat DeLacio for possessing 2 kilograms of heroin with the intent to distribute. The following year, he was arrested with Vincent Papa, caught with a suitcase containing nearly $1 million in cash. In 1974, DiNapoli's world came crashing down when he was convicted alongside several others, including the notorious Frank Butch Pugliese, on numerous counts of violating federal narcotics laws. During the trial, his role as a major loan shark was revealed, and he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The stakes were high, and the consequences were severe. In 1975, Joey D was convicted of extortion and tax evasion, earning him a 21-year prison sentence. The fall was inevitable. The iron bars couldn't hold him forever, though, and he was released in 1982. Upon his release, DiNapoli wasted no time, aligning himself with his brothers and working for Genovese family boss Anthony Salerno in the construction extortion rackets. It seemed he was back on top, but the law wasn't done with him yet. In 1993, DiNapoli was indicted on federal loan sharking charges. Convicted in 1995, he was sentenced to 30 months in prison. That same year, he faced 2 more indictments, one for federal mail fraud conspiracy and another for New York State racketeering. The second indictment, released on May 17, 1995, was a major blow. DiNapoli and his brother Louis were accused of illegally obtaining $5 million in asbestos removal and construction contracts from New York City and state agencies. These contracts, intended for minority-owned companies, were a sham, and Joey D found himself convicted and sentenced to 3 more years in prison. The cycle of crime and punishment continued. In 1996, DiNapoli pleaded guilty in the federal mail fraud conspiracy case, and on September 17, 1999, he was released from prison. But freedom was fleeting. By 2000, after the Lucchese Construction Group indictment, DiNapoli was identified as a capo in the family. His crew, including soldiers Philip DeSimone and Arthur Zambardi, was arrested alongside Steven Crea and others. The criminal enterprise was crumbling again. In 2003, with the imprisoned boss Vic Amuso's blessing, a ruling panel was formed to control the family. Joey D was back in a position of power, alongside Capos Agnello Migliore and Matthew Madonna. But on December 2007, New Jersey law enforcement struck a devastating blow. DiNapoli, Madonna, and several others were indicted and arrested. The investigation, dubbed Operation Heat, uncovered a $2.2 billion illegal gambling, money laundering, and racketeering ring stretching from New Jersey to Costa Rica. By October 2009, DiNapoli faced another indictment in New York. Alongside Madonna and 27 others, he was charged in a racketeering scheme that raked in approximately $400 million. The web of crime seemed never-ending. On February 12, 2016, DiNapoli pleaded guilty to racketeering in Operation Heat and was sentenced to 3 years in New Jersey State Prison. On the same day, he received another 1 to 3 years for his 2009 New York illegal gambling indictment, both sentences to be served concurrently. The final fall came in May 2017. Joey D, now the family consigliere, along with street boss Matthew Madonna, acting capo Tindaro Corso, and other family members were indicted and charged with racketeering, murder, and various narcotics and firearms offenses. The charges built upon earlier accusations related to the 2013 gangland execution of Michael Meldish in the Bronx. In January 2019, DiNapoli and John Castellucci pleaded guilty. During government witness John Panisse's testimony in May 2019, it was revealed that in 2017, imprisoned for life, boss Vic Amuso had sent a letter to Underboss Steven Crea. It was also disclosed that Andrew DeSimone had become the family's new consigliere in 2017, replacing DiNapoli. Joey D was later sentenced to 52 months in prison, and fined $250,000 for racketeering conspiracy. On January 11, 2023, Joseph DiNapoli was released from prison, a shadow of his former self. His dark journey through the criminal underworld had come full circle, leaving behind a legacy of crime and the heavy price of power.
When somebody crosses the Lucchese crime family, sending a message to the rest of the world in blood is much more than a statement. It's a declaration of the deadly repercussions that follow the betrayal. And when the boss discovers a member is singing to the fuzz like a canary, he knows exactly who to send in order to broadcast the response across the radio waves of the underworld. Let's chase down the details about Louis Bagels Didone, the enforcer elevated to boss who turned down a legitimate shot at life to pursue a world of carnage and chaos. Louis Bagels Didone, also known as Louis Crossbay, was born on February 23, 1946, in the unforgiving streets of Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He was seemingly destined for a life of crime. From a young age, he exhibited the cunning and ambition that would later define his criminal career. Though he played as a quarterback for New Utrecht High School and was even offered a football scholarship to Indiana State University in 1963, Louis rejected the path of a peaceful life and instead chose to remain in Bensonhurst, embracing the allure of the Lucchese crime family. Louis's nickname, Louis Bagels, stemmed from his ownership stake in Bagels by the Bay, a Howard Beach bagel shop on Cross Bay Boulevard. It was here, amid the aroma of freshly baked bagels, that Louis orchestrated his illegal rackets. He ran a car service and hijacked cigarettes, his operations growing increasingly sophisticated and ruthless. He soon became an associate of the Canarsie crew under Capo Paul Vario. On a warm summer night on August 23, 1982, in a dimly lit basement, Louis Didone, alongside Alphonse Darco and 4 others, stood solemnly before boss Anthony Corallo, underboss Salvatore Santoro, and Capo Paul Vario. The room was thick with tension as Louis swore his allegiance, a drop of blood sealing his fate as a made man in the Lucchese family. His descent began. Years later, in late 1988, shadows lengthened over Lucchese associate Thomas Red Gilmore. Suspicion had crept into boss Vicar Musso's mind. Gilmore was believed to be an informant. The order came swiftly. Gilmore had to die. On the icy night of February 5, 1989, Louis and Patti Della Russo lay in wait near Gilmore's Richmond Hills apartment in Queens. As Gilmore approached, the silence shattered with the crack of gunfire. 3 bullets to the head and neck, leaving Gilmore's lifeless body crumpled on the cold pavement. In August 1990, a sinister plot unfolded under the direction of Anthony Casso. Information from corrupt NYPD detectives Louis Ippolito and Steven Crea fingered Bruno Facciola as an informant. Louis, Frank Lastarino and Richard Pagliarulo set their plan into motion. On August 24, 1990, in a shadowy garage, Facciola, realizing the trap, tried to flee. Louis, with grim determination, chased him down and dragged him back. Facciola was stabbed, shot in the head and eyes, and a defrosted canary was shoved into his mouth, a gruesome message to any would-be informants. Days later, the body was found in the trunk of Facciola's car on East 55th Street in Canarsie. By early '91, Louis became acting capo of the Canarsie crew. His rise was steady, but trouble brewed beneath his feet. On May 1st, 1992, Louis, Robert Molinelli, Raymond Argentina and Alan Taglianetti stood trial for conspiring to rob the Rapid Armored Truck Company vehicle on March 25, 1988. Convicted, Louis was sentenced to 5 years in prison. As the prison gates closed behind him, Louis's once unstoppable rise took a steep fall. Paroled in 1996, Louis was ordered to avoid known criminals for 3 years. Almost immediately, he allegedly contacted Lucchese mobster Raymond Argentina. Despite these constraints, Louis's influence remained. He was promoted to consigliere, his reputation undiminished in the eyes of the family. In 2000, Steven Crea's indictment on corruption charges led to Louis's promotion to acting boss of the family. His power seemed limitless at that point. However, on November 15, 2002, Louis faced charges alongside consigliere Joseph Crea and 12 others for racketeering and extortion involving the Long Island strip club Cinderella. The legal noose was tightening, but Louis continued to maneuver, his confidence unshaken. December 2002 brought a further indictment. Louis, Crea Acting Capo Johnny Sideburns Cirella and others faced racketeering and extortion charges for a Long Island business. The walls were closing in once again. By March 2003, the final nail was hammered against him with another indictment for racketeering, loan sharking, gambling and conspiracy to commit murder, including the 1989 Gilmore and 1990 Faciola killings. Former Lucchese family acting boss Aldaco's testimony sealed Louis' fate. In 2004, Louis' personal life intersected with his criminal one. His daughter Laurie's fiancé, John McCarley, a Gambino family associate, pleaded guilty to bank burglary charges in Brooklyn federal court, agreeing to serve 6 years behind bars. The familial bonds that once strengthened him now threatened to unravel. On June 30th, 2004, Louis faced his inevitable downfall. Convicted of loan sharking and conspiracy to murder Gilmore and Faciola, he was sentenced to life in prison. His reign of power, marked by brutality and devastation, had come to an end. Louis Bagels Didone remains incarcerated at the high-security United States Penitentiary in Allenwood, Pennsylvania. His journey through the criminal underworld was a testament to the fleeting nature of power, the shadows of betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of dominance in the dark, unforgiving world of organized crime. When the mafia controls your neighborhood, every decision, every handshake, and every dollar moved can be a matter of life and death. Imagine growing up in a world where your mentor is a high-ranking mobster and your playground is the gritty streets of the Bronx. Today we're delving into the tumultuous life of Steven Crea, a man whose rise through the ranks of the Lucchese crime family was marked by ruthless ambition and deadly encounters. Steven Crea grew up on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, a neighborhood where the presence of the mafia was as common as the street vendors and corner delis. From a young age, he was drawn into the world of organized crime, mentored by Vincent DiNapoli, a made member of the Genovese crime family. By 1979, their drywall companies secured millions of dollars in contracts from Sebco, an initiative spearheaded by Catholic priest Louis Gigante. The southeast Bronx, with its crumbling buildings and desperate residents, became a goldmine for Crea and DiNapoli. By the early 1980s, Steven Crea was inducted into the Lucchese crime family, marking a significant rise from his humble beginnings on Arthur Avenue. In 1983, DiNapoli was imprisoned, leaving Crea to take control of their lucrative construction business. Despite the loss of his mentor, Crea remained close to DiNapoli, visiting him frequently in prison. Crea's world turned cold in 1985 when he was convicted of conspiring to murder a man he believed had assaulted his wife. The shadows of the prison walls loomed large over him until his conviction was overturned in 1987. In 1990, family boss Victor Amuso promoted Crea to Capo regime, taking over Samuel "Sammy Bones" Castaldi's crew in the Bronx. Crea specialized in labor racketeering, gaining control over Carpenter's Local 608 and using it to extort New York City contractors. He held a no-show job at Inner City Drywall and was involved with Local 282, further expanding his influence. The early 1990s saw Crea's astronomical ascent in the mafia. In 1993, with Victor Amuso imprisoned, Crea was promoted to underboss of the Lucchese family. His influence shifted the power center of the family away from the Brooklyn crews and back to the Bronx and Upper Manhattan, angering former underboss Anthony Casso and his Brooklyn loyalists. They plotted to murder Crea, but their plans fell apart when Zappola, Gioia, and the rest of Casso's faction were indicted and imprisoned. Crea's survival marked a significant triumph over his enemies. From 1997 to 1999, Crea led the Lucchese Construction Group, alongside Lucchese Caporegime's Dominic Truscello and Joseph Tangora. They controlled over $40 million in construction contracts, placing mobsters on company payrolls to report legitimate taxable income. Their dominance in the construction industry was a testament to their power, but it also attracted unwanted attention from law enforcement. In 1998, Crea became the acting boss of the Lucchese family after Joseph De Fede was indicted on labor racketeering and extortion charges. His power seemed unassailable until December 1999, when Crea and Joseph DeTello were caught on tape discussing bribery and extortion with Sean Richard, who was secretly recording their conversation. The dawn of the new millennium brought a wave of indictments. On September 6, 2000, Crea and other members of the Lucchese Construction Group were indicted on charges of state enterprise corruption, labor racketeering, extortion and bid rigging. The schemes had siphoned millions of dollars from public and private construction projects. Crea's attorney negotiated a plea deal, resulting in a 34-month prison sentence. Concurrently serving time for similar federal charges, Crea's climb was cut short before he reached the summit. Released in 2006 with parole restrictions, Crea's influence remained subdued until his parole expired in 2009. In March 2010, the FBI observed him meeting with Capo John Castellucci. By 2014, Jerry Capecci reported that Crea served as acting boss. On May 31, 2017, he was indicted for racketeering, fraud, and murder conspiracy, including the 2013 murder of Michael Meldish. The charges painted a grim picture of his ruthless methods. On November 15, 2019, Crea, Madonna, Christopher Londonio, and Terence Caldwell were convicted of executing Meldish's murder. On August 27, 2020, Crea was sentenced to life in prison, along with a $400,000 fine and the forfeit of $1 million. His fall from grace was complete, and he was demoted from his underboss position, marking the end of his reign in the mafia world. Incarcerated at the United States Penitentiary, Canaan in Pennsylvania, Crea's health deteriorated. Diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, he sought compassionate release in April 2024. The once powerful mobster, who had controlled millions and wielded immense power, now faced the end of his life in the confines of a prison cell, a testament to the rise and fall of a man ensnared by the dark allure of organized crime, his legacy forever marked by his choices.